Welcome to Blockchain Unpacked. Blockchain Unpacked is a videocast and podcast series held in partnership between RegTech Associates and Crystal Blockchain. Join Jason and Marina Kaustova every month and explore the real-world impact of criminal activity beyond the blockchain. During the series, we will introduce you to a range of experts who will help analyze regulatory effectiveness and share the latest news, trends and predictions in a digestible format to keep you in the know.
Hello everyone, I'm Marina Kaustova, CEO of Crystal Blockchain, and welcome to Blockchain Unpacked. This podcast provides you with a perspective from esteemed leaders in blockchain, technology, and regulatory sectors. And joining me as a co-host today is Jason CEO of RegTech Associates. We will commence by discussing most notable developments in the space of regulation around Web3 and AI, and subsequently we'll have a conversation with our guest, Mike Castiglione, former CI analyst and manager. So, Jason, last months, of course, have been very intensive for various key events in our space. What caught your eye in particular? What developments do you see as the most impactful ones?
Hi, Marina. Good to see you again. Yeah, I mean, this month's, I don't know about you, but I think it's been crazy. There's been so much news, so many developments. I think this show could be quite a long one, but I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a good one. I think we're going to go all around the world. I'm going to start close to home, and some news that broke in the UK last week about a new Economic Crime and Transparency Act with the catchy title of ECTA, ECCTA, and lots and lots of changes. Unlike some other jurisdictions where maybe they're trying to fit crypto into existing laws and regulations, this is a new set of legal capabilities effectively, and it allows things like on the criminal side, the seizure of assets without an arrest. It allows law enforcement officers to create wallets and transfer assets into those law enforcement controlled wallets. It also allows, if this ever will be a thing, the destruction of seized crypto assets if required. And also from a civil sort of legal perspective, it allows law enforcement agencies to take control and recover crypto assets, unhosted wallets effectively without a search warrant. And also, which I thought was quite interesting, allows the conversion or the exchange of crypto assets into cash. So where there's an ongoing case to protect, I guess, the value of those crypto assets against volatility. So there's a whole bunch of other changes on the financial crime side. The UK has been, it's not number one in many places in the world, but it's been number one in using fraudulent companies for fraud for quite a while through some fairly lax controls in setting up new companies in the UK, and all of that's come under a great reform. So quite a big piece of legislation came out, went through the law courts, and will come into effect, I think, in a staged manner over the next sort of months and years. So yeah, pretty big news, at least in the UK.
Oh, no, sure. I think we saw that coming, of course, because many companies decided to actually move their headquarters to UK or announce that they're going to be doing that. And of course, that combined with the efforts done by FCA in the previous couple of years to clean up the space, to make it better, that of course prepared the ground. And I think we saw, like about a month ago, final warning to crypto companies to comply, to submit all required information, and that was really the final step. From Crystal side, I think we saw that coming when we heard the feedback, particularly from UK-based law enforcement, and more increasing need for our solution that can be utilized on the ground during seizure operations that would allow immediately understand if there are assets that are hosted on these particular devices, and what kind of assets are those. Is there particular evidence, immediate evidence of these assets to be connected to certain illicit activities or criminal activities? So I think that was long ago supported also by on the ground actions outside activities, and now we see this missing part of the legislation coming in place, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's going to be more and more need for things like training, right? Like we've spoken about before, to really make sure people can use these tools effectively and use them as part of a thorough investigation, including other data sources as well. So yeah, great, interesting news. I mean, the other thing that caught my eye, which I think, again, you'd have to be asleep somewhere really for the last month and not notice this, is just the amount of noise and the amount of activity around AI and AI transparency, AI safety, alongside news around things like ChatGPT and LLMs in general. Sam Altman in front of Congress, etc., that happened last year. It seems all the world leaders are jumping on this AI safety and risk bandwagon. In the UK, the King of England and the Prime Minister have been hosting the AI Safety Summit this week, and that's resulted in a declaration known as Bletchley Park Declaration. And Bletchley Park was the home to sort of intelligence during the Second World War, so it's quite a famous venue, which is where the summit was hosted. And then also the G7 are set to agree a code of conduct, and I think, I'm not going to steal the thunder for later, but I'd probably trumping all of that news, no pun intended, was Joe Biden and the US government exec order around AI and AI safety. And you literally cannot move for AI news, although I think you might even have some bigger news for us as we go into the show. But yeah, that's pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah, developing very fast, and we're observing it very closely because it really gets personal for us here in Crystal, because I don't see how we can proceed further understanding risks associated with digital assets without deploying AI in full scale. We are already using AI to spot weird patterns, odd events that might be a signal of the early stages of rug pulls, or identifying certain malicious patterns. But of course, that's just the early phase for us and our colleagues, from space. Yeah, I think these rules, they might shake things a little bit for us, and we're very much interested, to see how AI can be deployed further to mitigate the risk and to identify the risk, prevent, risky and malicious activities.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to digging into Mike's views on this later as well. So, and Marina, what's going on in your world? What's caught your eye over the last sort of few weeks?
Oh yeah, in our space, everyone is of course talking about the events connected to the very devastated actions, that we saw, that Israel experienced a severe attack from Hamas in the recent weeks, exactly almost a month ago, right? So these, of course, resulted in an unprecedented number of casualties during the attack and the aftermath, which is still going on. And we're already experiencing it, not only from the stage where we need to understand what's going on in the crypto world. We also have our team members placed in Israel and Tel Aviv, such, again, as many of our colleague companies do. So yeah, such events, of course, they invariably led to the discussions, how these attacks have been planned and what kind of funding has been utilized for that to be prepared and planned properly. And a key topic has been shift, in Hamas funding methods in recent times. So we will delve into this later in this episode with Mike, of course, but it's important to understand, again, the repercussions this event had on the blockchain analytics industry. Because, what has happened? I'll give just set up the scene for that. So a major media outlet has published a report, and they based their conclusions on the data that they had from one of our fellow blockchain analytics companies. And they have reported, in doing their own analysis, that report has collected around $130 million through crypto donations. So the analytics company actually intervened, and they addressed and corrected the error. They said that data has been misinterpreted, and actually it was wrong conclusion done. But the media chose not to retract the story immediately. And disturbingly, of course, this led to 100 lawmakers that were signed a letter pushing for stricter crypto regulations. And the media, of course, wanted the best possible analysis, with the best intentions possible. And but this incorrect narrative, which was, again, corrected by blockchain analytics firm, it still misled the politicians. So I'm worried because we had more similar cases concentrated in October. Another significant media establishment actually erroneously reported the approval of Bitcoin ETF for BlackRock. So this immediately drove up Bitcoin prices, and this caused a series of position liquidations and financial losses for many companies. Everyone was raged, but it doesn't have this long-lasting impact on the industry as the one related to Hamas, of course. But still, it makes me think that our industry really plays a crucial role in educating those with the power to shape business policies and minds of people. And I've always emphasized the importance of the education. I published a series of articles actually recently about this concept of signal versus noise, right? What approach should be taken when we are analyzing such complex events, where running to conclusion too fast, it's simply irresponsible. You cannot do this, even if you're having the best intentions in mind. So yeah, it's a very complicated place, and we spoke exactly about what data is available right now to everyone and how we interpret this data and what do we do with that. What it tells us, spoiler alert, not too much, because we don't know what this money is spent for. I'm very much looking forward to speak to Mike about all this and to hear his opinion that this story still unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know how seriously you and your team at Crystal take your role, right, and your job, and the data you provide, and making sure that's got the best context when it's used. That I think can really be the whole story, right? And therefore, an expectation that people are aware of how they use that data and interpret correctly, I think is fair. Unfortunately, we seem to be in this world where people want to get to the conclusion the quicker, and there's almost this time to get something out. And I'm really interested. I know when we have Mike on, I want to discuss this with him. He's just written an article about some of the techniques that when he was formerly in the CIA that they use around getting to the truth, right? It's a worrying story. That of course the Israeli Hamas story is incredibly sad, and but however, I think the underlying issue here that we're going to talk about is as much about how society and researchers and journalists and others are using the data, and they have a responsibility to use that data. So yeah, I think it's a really, really important topic, and I know how seriously you take it.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, well, another big thing, and I think it's on the top of the mind of everyone, related to digital assets, is that Sam Bankman-Fried found guilty on 7 criminal fraud counts. His sentencing set for March 28th, but it's already clear that, he probably is going to be charged with more than 100 years. It's a big event. The FTX drama comes to an end, and what specifically surprises me is how fast the whole story revolved and came to current stage, right? I mean, the entire case, of course, connects not only crypto, and brings in not only crypto in the spotlight. It also speaks about broader, financial institutions practices that were in place. And I can see right now, 2 camps, forming out. One says that, crypto industry would never recover again, and this trust that has been lost, it's really hard to build it up back. But I'm thinking that it's not about crypto in particular, and I'm a big fan of the statement that technologies are always going to be utilized by bad actors, and it's our goal to figure out, how we identify this, how we treat that, and how do we observe such huge financial institutions holistically, taking into consideration not only one aspect of what's going on, but many of those, including risks related to governance, technological risks, and so on. So yeah, it's a big thing. But I think we have a long way for us forward to design how these kind of institutions can be operating in a much more transparent way.
Yeah, I mean that's the big news story, right? Just for anyone listening to this show, we're recording the show on November the 3rd, and the story only broke, yesterday, like in the US time. So it's very very fresh, and I agree. This is not a crypto story, right? It's a fraud story. It's a lack of governance story. It's a lack of control. It's profiteering. It's everything. You know, crypto's taking a really bad rap over this. Do criminals using AI for scams? Does AI get a bad rap because there's some criminal using a type of technology to make their crime more efficient or make proceeds higher, etc.? No, right? But however, I mean, you can't change history. Hopefully, what we can do is sort of put from this point forward. And I think a lot of commentators are talking about this is fraud. Like there's no other way to describe it. It's fraud. It could have been conducted in traditional finance. It could have been conducted in some other way. Just so happens, unfortunately, for the crypto industry, that SBF was all over crypto. So, but huge news story, and I'm sure it's going to have some repercussions from this point onwards, despite all the regulation and safety that's happening in the industry.
Yeah. No, true. I think this story is always going to stay in the study books, and people will be referring to that case many years ahead. And it definitely will have, already has a lot of impact on the policy that are deployed. With this in mind, I think it's a perfect time for us to bring in this week's guest, Mike Castiglione. So at the CIA, Mike was an analyst and manager who responded to international disputes. He informed diplomacy and defense policy at the highest levels of government, and he built bespoke enterprise software. Mike brought together academia, private enterprise, and government to leverage innovative thinking and technology to improve foreign policy decisions. At a Series B startup, he helped convey the importance of applying innovative methods to regulate financial markets, including for crypto. He has spoken and written on crypto policy and the lessons of how emerging tech supports national security and national competitiveness. So welcome, Mike. It's really great to have you with us today. First and foremost, how are you doing and what's been going on in your world these past months?
Hi, Marina. Hi, Jason. It's an honor to be on the podcast. One thing I've been doing maybe earlier than normal this year is just taking stock about how much has changed in the past 12 months. It's November, so I guess that's natural to do at the end of the year. But some of the dizzying international events, obviously it's the continuation of the Russia-Ukraine war, the cross-border attacks against Israel, the drama around crypto markets just in the past 12 months. And then also ChatGPT 3.5 was released to the public just in November of 2022. So it's only been a year, and that really has shaped the public conversation about technology and the economy and really the future of safety and work and national security. And it's also spawned really interesting, great ideas of how to apply it to solve real world problems.
Yeah, well, again, welcome to the show, Mike. I think you're right. When you look back, it's been a crazy 12 months, and it seems like the news is coalescing around some really big topics lately. As Marina said, right, obviously in the last 24 hours, I do want to get your thoughts and comments on of course FTX and SBF, if I get both those acronyms right, because that's fresh news for us. It would be good to hear your thoughts on that story, and then perhaps we move on to some of the other topics we had in mind.
I mean, I don't know what I could add about the FTX SBF drama other than just stating the obvious of how much of a tragedy it is. A tragedy, of course, for the victims, but also for SBF and his family and his friends. I mean, just imagine if his talents or his unique talents would have been channeled in a different way, right? And it kind of really just emphasizes to me the importance of making the right decisions, especially in kind of like an untamed youth in your 20s and 30s. like being in a structure and being in an environment, being surrounded by people who will help channel your decisions and your energies in the right direction, and not being in an environment that is just more apt for fast and loose decisions. So it's a tragedy all around.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to bring it back to that human reality, right? Thank you.
But speaking about the hope that actually Sam gave to a lot of crypto community, I remember watching him on a huge screen in my living room, speaking before the Congress and explaining how certain things worked. And I was thinking, wow, like maybe it's like one of the rare cases where we see a person coming from tech, from a startup, being young, and just and people joking that he's holding his hands like he's still playing Dota or something like game. And I was like and as many other people, we were really hoping to see more of these people coming straightly from tech and speaking about what they're building. And I think it's also people get mad because of a lot of these hopes, they were crushed also.
Yeah, I guess some of the public figures, the person you hoped they were, they become, and sadly in this case, it hasn't worked out that way. Let's move on to the first part of the show with Mike in, where we're going to move on and talk about a couple of comments. I mean, we've touched on this already, but obviously our news feeds, as Marina mentioned, have been dominated in the last month or so by the latest global conflict, the Israeli-Hamas conflict, and there's been a lot of discussion, as again Marina said earlier, about the role of cryptocurrencies in funding certain organizations and political parties. Can you provide your context and an overview of that debate, and maybe highlight some of the lessons learned from perhaps the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict? And Mike, I think we'll post this in the show notes. I read your article earlier about that you posted out on Substack, which was great, on taking the responsibility when you're researching these things to follow great practice, which is a really good read. I recommend it to everybody. But yeah, what are your thoughts in this topic, Mike?
Yeah, I guess lesson number one from that blog post is always read primary sources, and that's something I think on this question of Hamas and crypto funding, a lot of people are kind of reading the headlines or kind of employing fuzzy logic and jumping to conclusions, and then someone else is taking that incorrect conclusion and kind of stretching it even further. So I guess one more piece, I think Marina did an excellent job of describing the series of events of how we got into this controversy. I guess one more piece of context is that Hamas launched its cross-border surprise attack against Israel on October 7, and this article came out on October 10, so just 3 days afterwards. So that obviously it was a very emotional time, a lot of drama, rightly so, and in that context, it's really important as a professional to be mindful of that emotional environment and to pause and take time and really understand whether the press for meeting a deadline or saying something smart might be muddling your conclusions or thinking. I mean, this happens all the time for journalists, and certainly happened at CIA, where there was something surprising, or maybe we got something wrong or missed it, and you felt like an immediate pressure to say something. But sometimes the right answer is to pause, to kind of take that extra moment to talk to experts and talk to people across an organization and just double check your facts. The other thing related to, I guess, always reading primary sources. So the initial news article cited, I guess, 2 independent blockchain intelligence firms saying, Hamas is associated with, I think it was like $93 million, and another one said $41 million. And what erroneously happened is that politicians kind of added those 2 together and got to 130. So the equivalent is like if I have a jar of marbles and Marina estimates there are 500 marbles and Jason estimates there are 400, I can't say that you two estimated that there are 900 marbles, right? So it's like that's the same thing. So that was flaw number one in the logic there. And then, flaw number two is that, not all of that money was controlled by Hamas directly. And this came out in like earlier, deeper analysis from other blockchain intelligence firms. So I guess the equivalent is, let's say you have a bank and the mafia uses that bank for various reasons. Like not all the money in that bank is associated with shakedowns and criminal activity. Like some of it is. And the mafia might even want to hide its money in a bigger bank that has lots of funds, so it could kind of fly under the radar. But that doesn't mean the entire wealth of that bank is associated with or controlled by the mafia. So that's another kind of flaw in the logic of this case. On the other side, I think those who are a bit more pro crypto, that side are certainly downplaying Hamas's ability to hide and deceive. So let's kind of think about it for a second. Like Hamas is about a 40-year-old organization. They've been going toe-to-toe with Israel, one of the most sophisticated counterterrorism forces in the world, very sophisticated intelligence organization. Hamas just launched a surprise attack against Israel. So given that context, of course, they are able to hide things that everyone else is not seeing. Especially in open source. So given that, there's a high probability that there are wallets and other sources of funding that we just don't know about at this moment. Again, it's only been a month. So I guess on that side too, there's an order of humility in understanding who we're dealing with and the sophisticated nature of the organization is really important. And I guess the overall disappointment in this debate is that I feel like it's distracting attention from what really matters in thinking about how to block bad actors from using a new technology. And Marina got this spot on. Like what really matters is continually investigating, analyzing, blocking, seizing, and then anticipating that this organization is going to adapt based on how law enforcement and intelligence services kind of disrupt their activities. So I think it's whether Hamas has channeled 1 million in crypto or 100 million in crypto, that's the task ahead of us, and I think that's what we should be focused on.
So these rushed conclusions, this intention to move super fast with some critical data, it seems to be polarizing the public discourse quite critically. And again, it's dangerous to see that happening. But how actually we can, how the people here can navigate through this noise and how well-informed opinions can be done. Just to wait for when the right data will appear. Temptation to move and to act is so big.
I do have a quick question actually before we move on that sort of occurred to me. Obviously, any blockchain intelligence, blockchain analytics firm, will have their data and the data will be different and may or may not be contacted by journalists for comments. Like I'd like to get your thoughts, Marina. Like how do you? I mean, you can't prevent people interpreting the data in whichever way they see fit, right? And we're coming to whichever conclusions they want. And we might want them to do research in the way that you might have done, Mike, you will have done in your CIA roles. But how can you really, how can we really change this? Or how can the blockchain intelligence industry really change? Is it education? Is it something else? Is it, what are your thoughts, Marina?
Well, I think it just came to my mind that, there is a controversy in these two approaches because when I'm being asked, what are the biggest problems right now in the, legal frameworks and jurisdictional frameworks that prevent us from battling and stopping crime, I say that the agency, of those who are making decisions, we need to be able to move fast to stop bad actors, because otherwise they're going to be utilizing swaps and immediately getting away through all these, means of crypto transfer, which allow them to do so. So we really need to move super fast. And now, we are seeing another situation where moving fast is actually very harmful, and you cannot, because it's something that at stakes, is much bigger than just a bad actor who just hacked some protocol. So yeah, I mean, this is the tricky part of that, I guess.
Yeah, just to comment, conveying uncertainty is very difficult. And this, in our CIA analytic training, that we had dedicated lessons to how to convey to busy policymakers, our judgments of what's happening when there's very little information. So this is just a recognized very difficult thing to do. So there's tricks such as probabilistic language, or being very clear about what we know and don't know, and separating it out. So I think there are various tricks and tactics someone can use in any discipline to convey uncertainty, and just starting up top, saying, this is a fast-moving environment. We are coming to conclusions based on these particular sources, and these sources are limited, and there are other sources we don't know, we don't have access to. So I think being very transparent about not only what you think is happening, but why you think it's happening, the basis upon which you're making judgments. It takes discipline. It takes a little extra effort.
Yeah, I'm sure it takes a lot of extra effort, but yeah, I think really useful background. Thank you.
And as I understand, your approach in gathering and interpreting information from various sources means that you need to take into consideration all possible sources of data, including blockchain analytics. But maybe can give some more bring more light on how blockchain analytics plays particular role in proving or disproving certain hypotheses. I understand maybe not in some very nuanced details, but still.
Just to add, blockchain analytics as a innovation has been incredibly important. Years ago, really crummy people were doing horrible things, using Bitcoin. It was really a lot of it was Bitcoin back then, and they were under the presumption that they couldn't be found out. But with the advent of blockchain analytics, they found justice. They didn't get away with it. So it's a really important innovation, and it's an example of how basically it's the sword and shield of tech innovation, where you need innovation on both fronts. Like the bad guys, nefarious actors, whether it's fraudsters or criminals or people who are apt to exploit other people, are going to use whatever tools they have available, to include new technologies. So we need to build our defenses and be as innovative and as cunning as the criminals.
Yeah, and I think I guess we're seeing innovation and evolution of these tools as well, right? Marina will know better than me, but considering some of the tools in the industry have been around, a number of years now, they will have progressed quite significantly from where they started. And it seems to me, you made this comment in your article, Mike, about, or I think someone did in their comment about sort of armchair investigators. And we had Rob from Arrowsgate a couple of shows ago, and he talked about sort of, armchair investigators that were able to use blockchain explorers, and that's a completely different world with a completely different tool set to the professional grade products like Crystal and others, right, in the industry. So I think that's the other thing to I run a research company, right? So you state your sources of where the data comes from, and they're like obvious things and natural things to do, right? But I wonder if that discipline needs to be more across the industry, and citing a blockchain explorer versus citing one of the professional grade tools that's had hundreds of hours or years of development is a very different thing, right?
Yeah, one of the feeds I follow on X, formerly Twitter, is a bunch of open source analysts that are looking at the Israel-Hamas conflict and Russia-Ukraine. It's amazing, how much insight you can glean just from open source information. And this isn't just information that is just lying out there. There are investigative tools that you can use to dig into information that is, not classified but still available to investigators. I was chatting with a CEO of an open source intelligence firm yesterday, and this company is doing amazing work in bringing together, it's blockchain intelligence and also, Discord information and a code that's openly available, and really piecing together a whole story about who's behind certain efforts or other activities that, when something goes wrong, it's important to react quickly, but you need that base of knowledge and those tools available right away. Otherwise, you're just reacting.
Yeah, I'm also that's a really good insight. I'm also curious, Marina. We've never really talked about this, but as we've raised a couple of times, a couple of previous shows, and even now, you have a greater responsibility to ensure that the processes you go through to take the public data and augment with your data on top of that is done to world-class standards. And how do you go about that? How does I'm sort of curious, how does that happen?
Well, I think it's critical to make sure that those who are utilizing our solution are clearly understanding where each bit of data comes from, so they can really make it adjustments, on their optics, and just take out, whatever they think, as non-reliable and non-impactful, data, because that's a reality. We cannot grow our teams of analysts who are sifting through each bits of data, infinitely. We really need to think about plugging in data providers and OSINT information, and these OSINT data has been very, very impactful and very useful as of lately. So the question is, again, there are companies or organizations, that trust certain sources, and there are others who won't trust them. And it's just my responsibility to make sure they clearly understand what kind of data they're using, and they are able to, again, change the optics. To your point, a few episodes ago, we mentioned these some of interesting initiatives where the Archon Intelligence launched an exchange where you can submit data and receive bounty, for these data. And I was in general skeptical about the approach, but right now, actually, I can see how that could work for this particular situation and for this particular case, where OSINT analysts who are doing a lot of this pro bono work, sifting through the bits of data available to them, can actually have, an opportunity and place, to submit this data in the hands of some people who can, again, take that and process it with some more powerful tools and figure out what can be done with that. So it's an important bridge, that's being established. And again, we cannot just close our eyes on that data, but we really need to be sober and clear to whoever consumes that, where it comes from. I think on this note we can conclude. And huge thanks to our special guest Mike for joining us in this room and in this show today. We hope you enjoyed it, and please tune in next month for episode number 9. It will be the final episode for our first season of Blockchain Unpacked.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.